Talk about a terrifying question, right? But believe it or not, that's the exact premise of a film that didn't just shock the world. It created an entire genre.
So, let's dive into the 2000 Japanese thriller that really started it all, Battle Royale. We're going to unpack exactly how this one film got so controversial that it was actually banned in several countries, but at the same time was so influential it literally created a genre we all know today.
All right, here's how we're going to break it down. First, we'll get into the premise of this deadly game. Then, we'll look at the film itself, the characters, the creator. After that, we'll tackle the huge controversy it kicked up, and finally, we'll explore its massive lasting legacy. Okay, so first up, the game itself. What makes it so bone-chilling? Well, the setup is just terrifyingly simple and honestly, brutally effective.
Yeah, that's the core concept right there. The film takes something totally normal, a school field trip, and just twists it into this inescapable nightmare where the only goal is to be the last one standing. Insane.
So, you're probably asking yourself, why on earth would a government do something like this? Well, in the movies world, it's their extreme solution to what they see as a crisis of disrespectful kids. It's a terrifying law, and it's all about one thing: instilling absolute fear and control.
But okay, how do you actually force a bunch of teenagers to do this? The answer is a terrifyingly simple system. See, every student gets fitted with one of these explosive collars. And they aren't just a threat, they're a psychological weapon. They're there to enforce the rules. They shrink the battlefield with these forbidden zones, and they make it crystal clear. There is absolutely no escape.
And here's a little context for you. This whole shocking story didn't even start on screen. It was actually a hugely popular and, yeah, just as controversial novel from 1999 by Koshun Takami. And the book, it dove even deeper into the psychology of these kids and their terrifying world.
All right, so now let's meet the people who are right at the heart of this nightmare. We're talking about the characters fighting to survive and also the creator who brought this whole thing to the screen.
So right in the middle of all this chaos, this fragile alliance starts to form. You've got Shuya and Noriko trying to protect each other, and then they're joined by Shogo, who's this hardened veteran from a previous game. Their trust, it's like this small act of rebellion, this little flicker of humanity in a system that's designed to just snuff it out. And the guy overseeing all this, it's their former teacher, Kitano. But here's the thing, he's not some mustache-twirling villain. He's way more complex. He's basically a guy who feels totally abandoned and disrespected by the younger generation. He's the perfect symbol of that disillusioned adult authority that's enforcing this horrific system.
And to really get the raw anger in this film, you have to understand its director. Kinji Fukasaku was 70 years old when he made Battle Royale. Think about that. And he was channeling his own trauma from being a teenager during World War II right into the story. He said he felt betrayed by the adults of his generation, and that powerful, raw sense of disillusionment, that's the beating heart of this entire movie.
And that raw anger? That is exactly why this film caused such an uproar. This wasn't just a movie, folks. It was a cultural firestorm. I mean, no surprise here, right? A film showing junior high kids in a fight to the death was intensely controversial. It kicked off these fierce debates about youth violence, about media influence, and a lot of countries either just refused to rate it or straight up banned it completely for years. But here's the key. The violence was never really the point. If you look beneath the surface, the film is asking some really brutal questions. Like, what happens when authority just becomes pure tyranny? How fast can innocence be totally shattered? And what are you truly capable of when all of society's rules just disappear? And the movie gets these ideas across using some really powerful symbols. You've got the school uniforms, right? As they get more torn and bloodied, you're literally watching the decay of innocence. The collars, they're this constant, terrifying reminder of government control. And the whole friend versus friend thing, it forces you to ask, hey, how strong are my friendships really when survival is on the line? So, despite all that controversy, or maybe, just maybe, because of it, Battle Royale didn't just fade away. Oh no, it became a phenomenon. So let's look at its incredible lasting impact. So while all the politicians and censors were debating it and wringing their hands, audiences, they flocked to it. The film was a massive, massive success in Japan, and then word of mouth just built this passionate international cult following that you simply could not ignore.
And of course, look, it's impossible to talk about this film without mentioning its most famous successor, The Hunger Games. But while they share that core idea, they are totally different animals. The Hunger Games is really a young adult story about heroic rebellion and hope. Battle Royale, it's the raw, nihilistic predecessor. It's a much, much bleaker commentary on societal pressure and the brutal, ugly nature of survival. But its biggest legacy? You could argue it's the entire genre that it literally named. Think about it. A big group of players, a shrinking arena, one survivor. Sound familiar? That is the blueprint for video game giants like Fortnite and PUBG. This film didn't just influence culture. It basically created a new language for it.
So you see this whole journey from a controversial book to a cinematic masterpiece. It just goes to show how far ahead of its time this story really was. What started out as a scandal is now pretty much cemented as essential viewing.
So, what's the big takeaway here? Well, Battle Royale is so much more than just a shocking movie. It's a powerful critique of authority that was born from real-world trauma. It survived this huge storm of controversy to become a cult classic, and then it created the blueprint for a genre that pretty much dominates pop culture today.
And that really just leaves us with one final thought. The fact that this format, this whole idea, is more popular now than ever before, it poses a really fascinating question, doesn't it? Why are we still so drawn to these stories of societal collapse and the desperate fight for survival?